You've sent out 200 and something applications, 0 callbacks, and somewhere around application number 100, you started believing the problem is you. It's not. The job market didn't get harder because you got worse. It got quietly rebuilt while you were still playing by the old rules. Okay, so let's actually talk about this, because I don't think anyone is talking about it the right way. Every career advice video on the internet is stuck in 2015. Polish your resume, tailor your cover letter, network more. Cool, great, sure. You've probably already done all of that. You've had your resume reviewed by 3 different LinkedIn coaches who all told you different things. You've done the coffee chats, you've sent the just checking in follow-up emails that nobody answers, and you're still stuck, refreshing your inbox like it owes you something. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud on a motivational channel, because it's not exactly inspiring. The job market you're trying to break into is not the same job market your older sibling broke into 5 years ago. It's not the same one your parents are quietly comparing you to, the ones who got a stable job at 22 and never really had to think about it again. That ladder isn't just harder to climb right now. In a lot of industries, the first few rungs of it are just gone, quietly removed. Nobody announced it. And I want to be really clear about something before we go further, because this is not going to be one of those videos that ends in so basically, we're all doomed, good luck. That's not useful. And honestly, it's not even accurate. What's happening right now is not the end of work. It's a genuinely disorienting transition period, and you happen to be one of the people standing right in the middle of it, without a map, being told by everyone older than you that the map still works fine. So let's actually look at what's happening. Not the panicked headlines, not the AI is going to take every job doom content, but the actual specific structural thing that's making this so much harder for anyone under 30 right now. And more importantly, what you can actually do about it that isn't just try harder. So, here's the actual mechanism, and I promise this is more interesting than it sounds. For basically forever, entry-level jobs existed for one specific reason. Not because companies were being generous, not because they loved training fresh grads out of the goodness of their corporate hearts. They existed because there was a category of work that was low stakes, repetitive, and safe enough to hand to someone with 0 experience while they figured things out. Writing the first draft of a social media caption, debugging a simple, obvious bug in a small function, answering the same 12 customer questions over and over until you knew the product inside out, building a basic spreadsheet nobody senior wanted to waste their time on. That was the deal. You did the unglamorous, repetitive stuff badly at first, then less badly, and eventually you leveled up into someone a company actually needed to keep around. That entire category of work is exactly what generative AI is built to do. Not the hard, judgment-heavy 20 years of context work, the repetitive, pattern-based, low-stakes stuff, the stuff juniors used to cut their teeth on. So, companies didn't sit down in a boardroom and decide to be cruel to 22-year-olds. What actually happened is a lot quieter and honestly kind of boring, in the way most systemic problems are boring instead of dramatic. A task that used to require hiring a junior person now gets handled by a tool that costs a fraction as much and never calls in sick. Multiply that across marketing teams, customer support desks, and junior coding roles. At thousands of companies over just a couple of years, and you get a genuinely new shape to the job market. Not fewer jobs everywhere. Fewer jobs specifically at the bottom rung. And this isn't a vibe I'm describing. By the way, this is showing up in actual labor data. Researchers looking specifically at workers in their early 20s, in the roles most exposed to AI tools, found a real measurable drop in employment for that group since around 2022, while more experienced people doing similar work didn't see anywhere close to the same decline. Meanwhile, companies have openly cited AI as a factor in tens of thousands of layoff announcements over the past year alone. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's public data, sitting right there. Here's the part that makes it feel personal. Even though it's not, job postings didn't get the memo that the entry-level door is closing. You'll still see a listing that says, and I quote, entry-level and then 2 lines down, 3 to 5 years of experience required. Which, sorry, is that not the actual definition of a paradox? How exactly are you supposed to get 3 years of experience if the 0-year door keeps getting quietly bricked over? It's not you misunderstanding how job hunting works. It's the postings themselves not making internal sense anymore, because the whole pipeline underneath them shifted and nobody updated the paperwork. And I want to be honest with you, because doom and gloom content is easy to make, and it's genuinely not what's happening here. This isn't some robot uprising where every job on Earth vanishes by next Tuesday. It's messier and more uneven than that. Some industries are barely affected. Some are getting hit hard and fast. Company leadership in a lot of these same organizations is publicly optimistic, talking about efficiency gains and new roles being created. And to be fair, some new roles genuinely are being created. But if you're 23 applying for your first real job, none of that macro optimism is landing in your inbox as a callback. You're not imagining the gap between AI creates net positive jobs long term and I cannot get literally anyone to respond to my application this month. Both of those things are true at the same time. That's exactly what makes this moment so disorienting instead of simply bad. It's not a clean villain and victim story. It's a genuinely uneven transition, and you happen to be standing in the part of it that hurts the most right now, while the headlines mostly talk about the part that sounds fine. And here's the uncomfortable business logic underneath all of it. The part that almost nobody says out loud in these conversations. From a company's perspective, in the short term, training a junior person has always been an investment with a delay on the payoff. You hire someone, you spend months having more experienced people slow down to teach them, and eventually, if it works, you get a capable employee. That was always a bit of a gamble, but for decades, it was a gamble worth taking, because there wasn't really another option if you wanted a pipeline of future senior talent. Now, there's a cheaper, faster alternative sitting right there, and a lot of companies are taking the short-term option without fully thinking through the long-term consequence, which is that in 5 or 10 years, there won't be enough experienced people left to promote into senior roles because nobody let them become experienced in the first place. That's a problem for future company. Right now, it's a problem for you. And it doesn't look the same everywhere, which is honestly part of what makes it so confusing to talk about. If you're trying to break into entry-level software roles, the squeeze is sharp and immediate, because writing basic, well-defined code is almost exactly what these tools are best at. If you're trying to break into marketing or content, it's a slower squeeze. More about fewer junior seats per team than total collapse. If you're in something hands-on or deeply relational healthcare, skilled trades, in-person client work, you're mostly watching this from the sidelines instead of living inside it directly. So if you've been comparing your job search to a friend in a completely different field and wondering why theirs seems so much easier right now, it might not be about effort at all. It might just be that you landed in one of the industries taking the hit first. So, if you've been quietly wondering whether you're just worse at this than everyone before you, whether you missed some obvious skill, Whether you should have picked a different major, a different city, a different anything. I need you to actually hear this part. You didn't miss a memo that everyone else got. There was no memo. The rules changed mid-game for your specific age group in a way that mostly wasn't your parents' experience, mostly wasn't even your older siblings' experience, and, honestly, wasn't clearly explained to anyone, including the companies posting these confusing job listings in the first place. Okay, so here's the actual insight. The thing I think genuinely changes how this feels once you actually sit with it. Every generation that goes through a big structural shift in the labor market ends up with one specific age group who gets caught right in the gears of it. It happened to people entering the workforce during the 2008 financial crash who spent years being told quietly and not so quietly that they just weren't trying hard enough when the actual problem was that an entire economy had seized up around them. It happened during earlier waves of automation when whole categories of manufacturing jobs disappeared and the people who lost them were treated in a lot of public conversation at the time, like personal failures, instead of people standing in the path of something much bigger than any one of them. It's happening again right now, and you happen to be the specific age group standing in it this time. And I think that's actually the important reframe, because right now, a lot of the internal story going on in your head probably sounds something like, everyone before me figured this out. So what's wrong with me? But that story only works if you ignore who you're comparing yourself to. Your older sibling, your parents, that one friend who got hired straight out of school and never seemed to shut up about it. None of them had to walk through this exact door. They walked through a different one at a different time under different rules. Comparing your current results to their past results isn't actually a fair comparison of effort or talent. It's a comparison across two different games with two different rule sets. And only one of them changed the rules mid-match. There's also a quieter thing happening underneath all of this, which is that a lot of career advice, especially the kind that goes viral, comes from survivorship bias. You hear from the person who did land the job, who's now making content about the 5 habits that got them there. You almost never hear from the hundreds of equally qualified, equally hardworking people who did the exact same things and got nothing because I did everything right and it still didn't work. Doesn't really make for an inspiring caption. So the advice landscape ends up quietly skewed toward stories that make it sound like this is purely a personal formula to crack, when a huge part of the outcome right now is about which door you happen to be standing in front of. So here's the actual insight, stripped down to one sentence. Your timeline isn't broken. The ladder you're trying to climb is being rebuilt in real time with you still standing on it, and pretending it's the same stable structure your parents climbed is what's actually making this feel so much worse than it needs to. Which matters, practically, for one specific reason. If you keep treating this as a personal failure, the natural response is to do more of the exact same thing, but harder. Send more applications into the same broken system. Polish the same resume format one more time. Feel guiltier every time it doesn't work, which just adds a second layer of exhaustion on top of an already exhausting search. But if you understand this as a structural shift instead, the response changes completely. You stop trying to out-hustle a door that's closing and you start looking for the doors that are actually open right now, even if they don't look like the doors you were promised growing up. And I think this is also why the whole thing feels so much heavier than a normal rough patch. It's not just that the job search is slow, it's that it quietly attacks the exact story You were told your whole life about how adulthood is supposed to work. Do well in school, get the degree, apply yourself, and the next step opens up. That was the deal, more or less for a long time. So when you do all of it and the next step just doesn't open, it doesn't feel like a scheduling delay. It feels like evidence about who you are, like the universe quietly grading you and handing back a bad result. Except it's not a grade. It's a snapshot of an economy going through something genuinely unusual at the exact moment you happen to walk up to the door. That's not me about to tell you to just pivot to trades or just learn to code, by the way. Because that advice is usually about as useful as it sounds, which is to say, it's something more specific than that, and it's what we're getting into next. So realistically, what do you actually do with all of this? Not manifest your dream job, not just believe in yourself harder, actual concrete stuff. First one, change what counts as proof of experience. The old system said experience only counts if someone paid you a salary for it inside a company. That definition is quietly dying. And honestly, that's not entirely bad news. If the entry-level door is narrower, the move is to build a visible trail of actual work that exists outside that door entirely. A small freelance project, a contribution to an open source tool, redesigning something for a local nonprofit for free, on your own time, and posting about what you actually did. It doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be real, and it needs to be visible. Because a lot of hiring right now happens off the strength of, here's proof I can do the thing, not here's a bullet point claiming I can do the thing. Second one, and this is the one people resist the most. Stop trying to outcompete the AI tools and start becoming the person who's genuinely good at directing them. This sounds like corporate buzzword nonsense, I know, but stick with me. The tasks disappearing are the purely repetitive ones. The tasks becoming more valuable are judgment, editing, catching what the AI got subtly wrong, knowing which output is actually good versus which one just sounds confident. That's a real, learnable, buildable skill, and almost nobody your age has been explicitly taught it yet, which means there's still room to get genuinely good at it before it becomes the new baseline expectation. Third one, move a meaningful chunk of your energy away from cold applications and toward actual conversations with actual humans. I know networking sounds slimy, like you're supposed to pretend to be interested in someone purely to extract a favor. That's not what this is. This is closer to just being a curious person who reaches out and asks people in a field you want to be in genuine questions about what they do. Most roles, even now, still get filled through someone knowing someone, not through a perfectly optimized resume beating an algorithm. That's frustrating if you're an introvert, and I get it, but it's also just true and worth doing even in small, low-pressure doses. Fourth one, and honestly, maybe the most important one, separate your sense of self-worth from your rejection count. Not because rejection doesn't hurt, it genuinely does, but because treating every no as a referendum on your value as a person is going to wear you down faster than the job search itself will. Try treating this more like running an experiment than sitting a final exam. Experiments have a lot of failed attempts built into the process by design. That's not you being bad at the experiment. That's just what running one looks like. And last one, let the timeline actually be longer than you were promised it would be, without treating that as evidence you failed. The old timeline was built for an economy that doesn't fully exist anymore. Taking longer to land something right now isn't a character flaw. It's just an accurate description of the current environment, one that a whole cohort of people your exact age are quietly living through at the same time as you, even if nobody's posting about it on their main feed. Which brings me to the last thing, the one that doesn't fit neatly into a bullet point, but might matter more than any of them. Talk about this out loud with actual people, instead of quietly assuming you're the only one struggling while everyone else has it figured out. Text a friend who's also been job hunting for 8 months and just ask how they're actually doing. Not the polished version, the real one. You'll probably find out they've been sitting with the exact same shame, assuming the exact same thing about you. Shared, out loud honesty about a shared structural problem does something private grinding alone can't do. It stops the story in your head from turning "the market is broken right now" into "I am broken." Which, if you've made it this far into the video, is probably the sentence you actually needed to hear undone today. So, go back to that number from the very beginning. 200 and something applications. 0 callbacks. If you're living inside that number right now, I need you to actually let this land. That number is not a scoreboard measuring your worth. It's not proof you're behind, or lazy, or missing some obvious trick everyone else was handed. It's the honest, unglamorous cost of trying to walk through a door that's genuinely narrower than it was for the people who told you how this was supposed to go. You are not failing at a stable game. You're early and a little lost inside a game that's actively being rebuilt while you're standing in the middle of it, which is a completely different, much less personal problem than the one you've probably been quietly blaming yourself for. Being confused right now doesn't mean you're behind. It just means you're one of the first people who has to figure this particular version of the puzzle out in real time without a finished map. Because the people who came right before you never had to. That's not a comforting lie to make you feel better. It's just what's actually true. And true is a much better place to build from than "there's something wrong with me" ever was. So, take a breath, close the 40th tab of the day, and go easy on yourself tonight. If this actually put words to something you've been feeling but couldn't quite explain, do me a favor and hit like. It genuinely helps this reach the next person who needs to hear it instead of blaming themselves alone tonight. Subscribe if you want more of this, the honest version of figuring life out, not the fake motivational version. And drop your application count in the comments. No shame. I want to see how many of us are actually in this together.